There's an island covered in ice. Population, 57,000. GDP, smaller than a mid-sized American suburb. And right now, some of the wealthiest investors on Earth are circling it like it's the last unclaimed gold mine in human history. This is Greenland, and something very strange is happening. In the last 3 years, venture capital firms have poured over $800 million into Greenland-related projects. Mining rights that were worthless a decade ago are now being traded like cryptocurrency at peak hype. The Danish government, who technically still owns the place, has started hiring crisis consultants to figure out what to do about all the sudden attention. And here's the part that makes no sense. Most of Greenland is uninhabitable. There are no roads connecting the towns. You can't drive from one city to another. You have to fly or take a boat. The entire country has fewer people than a sold-out football stadium. So why is everyone suddenly obsessed with a frozen rock in the middle of nowhere? Let's rewind, because understanding what's happening in Greenland requires understanding what changed. And what changed wasn't Greenland, it was the ice. For most of human history, Greenland was strategically irrelevant. The Vikings showed up, realized it was a terrible place to live, and left. The Danes claimed it in the 1700s, mostly because no one else wanted it. During the Cold War, the US built a military base there, Thule Air Base, because it was a convenient spot to watch for Soviet missiles. But that was it. Geopolitically, Greenland was a footnote. Economically, even less interesting. Too cold, too remote, too expensive to extract anything. The few mineral deposits geologists knew about weren't worth the cost of getting them out. Then, the planet started warming, and suddenly, the math changed. Greenland's ice sheet is melting faster than almost anyone predicted. We're talking about roughly 280 billion tons of ice disappearing every year. That's not a typo. Every single year, Greenland loses ice equivalent to the weight of 40,000 Empire State Buildings. Now, that sounds like a disaster, and it is. Rising sea levels, disrupted weather patterns, entire ecosystems collapsing. All true. But here's the uncomfortable part. Disasters create opportunities, and some very smart people started noticing what was under all that ice. Turns out, Greenland is sitting on obscene amounts of rare earth minerals. We're talking about elements like neodymium, praseodymium, dysprosium, names that sound like they're from a sci-fi movie, but are actually the backbone of modern technology. These minerals are inside your phone, your laptop, electric car batteries, wind turbines, solar panels, missile guidance systems. Every piece of technology that runs the modern world needs rare earth elements to function. And here's the problem. Right now, China controls about 70% of global rare earth production. They mine it, refine it, and export it. The rest of the world is terrifyingly dependent on one country for materials that are essential to national security and the entire green energy transition. For years, the US and Europe have been trying to find alternative sources. They've looked everywhere: Australia, Canada, parts of Africa. Some deposits exist, but they're expensive to extract, politically complicated, or environmentally catastrophic to mine. Then, someone looked at the melting ice in Greenland and realized we don't have to dig through permafrost anymore. The planet is doing the excavation for us. By some estimates, Greenland could be sitting on reserves worth over $1.5 trillion, maybe more. Nobody knows for sure because large parts of the island have never been properly surveyed. The ice was in the way. It isn't anymore. So here's what happened next. Quietly, over the past 5 years, a land rush began. First came the geologists. Funded by mining companies, they started mapping Greenland's newly exposed terrain, satellite imaging, core samples, the works. What they found wasn't just rare earths. There's uranium, zinc, lead, gold, rubies, even oil and gas reserves offshore that were previously impossible to reach. Then came the money. Private equity firms, sovereign wealth funds, Chinese state-backed enterprises, American venture capitalists, even Jeff Bezos-backed investment groups started sniffing around. Mining licenses that sat dormant for decades suddenly got activated. In 2021 alone, Greenland's government received over 50 applications for new exploration permits. That's more than the previous 20 years combined. But here's where it gets messy. Greenland isn't technically an independent country. It's an autonomous territory within the Kingdom of Denmark, which means Denmark still controls foreign policy and defense, but Greenland controls its own natural resources. This arrangement worked fine when nobody cared about Greenland. Now it's a geopolitical minefield. The current government in Greenland, a coalition that came to power largely on promises of economic independence, sees mining as a ticket out of Danish dependency. Right now, Denmark gives Greenland about $600 million a year in subsidies. That's roughly a third of Greenland's entire budget. If they could replace that with mining revenue, they could finally go fully independent. Sounds great, right? Self-determination, economic sovereignty, a small nation taking control of its own destiny. Except there's a problem. Greenland has no infrastructure to support large-scale mining, no roads, no deep-water ports that can handle industrial cargo, no workforce trained in extraction operations. They have 57,000 people, many of whom live in isolated fishing villages, and you need tens of thousands of workers just to run a single large mine, which means any mining operation would require foreign companies, foreign workers, and foreign capital, and foreign influence. So the very thing that's supposed to make Greenland independent might actually make them more dependent than ever, just on different masters. Now let's talk about the other player in this story, the one nobody wants to acknowledge but everyone's thinking about. Donald Trump tried to buy Greenland in 2019. The media treated it like a joke. Late-night comedians had a field day. The Danish Prime Minister called the idea absurd. Trump got mad and canceled a state visit. But here's the thing, it wasn't absurd. Strategically, Greenland is about to become one of the most important pieces of real estate on the planet. The Arctic is warming faster than anywhere else on Earth, and as the ice melts, new shipping routes are opening up. The Northwest Passage, a sea route through the Arctic that connects the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, has been a fantasy for centuries. Ships kept trying and getting stuck in ice. Now it's becoming navigable for several months a year. If that route fully opens, it cuts shipping time between Europe and Asia by 40%. That's trillions of dollars in global trade suddenly flowing through the Arctic, and Greenland sits right in the middle of it. The US military knows this, so does Russia, so does China. Russia's been building military bases across its Arctic coastline for the past decade. China's been sending icebreaker ships into the region and calling itself a near-Arctic nation, which is geographically nonsense but politically strategic. And the US? They've got that air base in Thule, but beyond that, they've got no real foothold. Which is why Trump's offer wasn't a joke, it was cold geopolitical logic. Greenland is about to be one of the most contested places on Earth, and they're not ready for it. So let's talk about what happens if this actually goes forward. Let's say mining starts at scale, foreign companies pour in, infrastructure gets built, Greenland starts pulling billions out of the ground. Best case scenario? They become the Norway of rare earth minerals, build a sovereign wealth fund, invest carefully, turn resource wealth into long-term prosperity, maintain independence, control their own destiny. But that's not usually what happens. There's a reason economists call it the resource curse. Countries with huge mineral wealth almost always end up worse off, not because the resources are bad, but because the money corrupts everything. Look at Venezuela. Massive oil reserves, should be one of the richest countries in Latin America. Instead, it's an economic disaster zone. Or the Democratic Republic of Congo, one of the most resource-rich places on Earth, also one of the poorest. Here's why. When a country gets sudden resource wealth, politics becomes about controlling that wealth, not building schools, not investing in people, not creating a diversified economy, just controlling the money. You get corruption, you get foreign interference, you get local elites cutting deals with multinational corporations, you get environmental destruction, and you get a population that stays poor while the money disappears into offshore accounts. Greenland's population is tiny and politically inexperienced on the global stage. They're about to be dealing with some of the most ruthless corporate and state actors on the planet. The risk that they get exploited, manipulated, or outright bought off is very high. And then there's the environmental irony. The reason Greenland's minerals are suddenly accessible is because of climate change. The ice is melting because we burned too much fossil fuel and pumped too much carbon into the atmosphere. Now we want to mine Greenland for the minerals we need to build the green technology that's supposed to stop climate change. Which means we're exploiting the consequences of environmental destruction to fuel the solutions to environmental destruction. Mining operations will cause more environmental damage. They'll accelerate ice melt locally. They'll disrupt ecosystems that are already under massive stress. There's something deeply absurd about this. The planet is breaking, and our solution involves breaking it a little more in a different spot. But that's the logic of the system. The transition to green energy isn't going to be clean. It's going to require massive extraction, huge supply chains, sacrifice zones, just different ones than before. Greenland might be one of those zones. So, here's where we are. A remote island that nobody thought about is suddenly the center of a global scramble. Investors smell money, governments smell strategic advantage, and the 57,000 people who actually live there are watching all of this happen with a mix of hope, fear, and deep uncertainty. They want independence. They want prosperity. They don't want to be Denmark's charity case forever. But they also know that prosperity usually comes with strings, and the people holding those strings don't always have Greenland's best interests in mind. The ice is melting, the money is coming, and nobody really knows what happens next. Is Greenland about to have its moment, or is it about to become another cautionary tale of what happens when a small place with big resources meets global capitalism? The honest answer is, we won't know until it's too late to stop it.